I am Diego, 35 years old, and the founder of a modest but profitable software company. My life has always been about honest work and genuine connections, unlike my brother James, who flaunts his investment banking career and mansion in the suburbs. Last December, he called to inform me I wasn't welcome at our family Christmas because it was no place for losers like me. What James didn't realize was that I had been quietly funding his perfect life for years. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. Growing up in Chicago, in a middle-class neighborhood, our parents made it clear that appearances mattered above all else. Our house wasn't the biggest, but Mom and Dad stretched every dollar to maintain the illusion of prosperity. From the carefully manicured front lawn to the brand-name clothes they insisted we wear to school, everything was about the image we projected to others. James, my brother, who is 3 years older, absorbed this lesson completely. From elementary school, he gravitated toward the popular kids, always finding ways to align himself with whoever had the most social currency. I remember when he was 14 and I was 11, he refused to acknowledge me in the school hallway because I wasn't cool enough to be associated with him and his friends. Our parents never corrected this behavior. In fact, they often praised his social climbing as good networking. I was different from the beginning. While I understood the game my family was playing, I couldn't bring myself to care about impressing people who only valued surface appearances. I made a few genuine friends rather than a large circle of convenient acquaintances. This fundamental difference in our approaches to life created an early divide between us that only widened with time. When college decisions came around, the contrast in our paths became even more pronounced. James applied only to prestigious business schools, with our parents paying for expensive college consultants and writing checks for application fees without hesitation. They drove him to alumni interviews and bought him his first tailored suit for campus visits. His acceptance to Wharton was celebrated with a party that cost more than my entire first semester would eventually cost. For my education, I chose to study computer science at Illinois State University. It wasn't prestigious enough for my parents' liking, but the program was solid, and the tuition was something I could manage with scholarships and part-time work. When I announced my decision, my father's first question wasn't about the program or my career prospects, but, what will we tell the Richardsons? The Richardsons were neighbors whose son had gone to Northwestern. Throughout college, I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus IT help desk while taking a full course load. During summers, I interned at local tech companies, building my skills and making connections based on my work rather than family friends. James, meanwhile, spent his summers at prestigious internships, arranged through my father's golf buddies, and his evenings at networking events, where he collected business cards like trophies. After graduation, I took a position as a junior developer at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. The salary wasn't impressive, but the opportunity to learn was valuable. I lived in a small apartment with a roommate, drove a used Honda, and spent my evenings and weekends working on side projects. My parents viewed my lifestyle as evidence of failure rather than recognizing that I was investing in my future on my own terms. James landed a position at a top investment bank right out of Wharton. He immediately leased a luxury apartment in the Gold Coast neighborhood and bought a BMW. Every family dinner became a showcase for his latest achievements: the clients he was managing, the deals he was closing, the executives he was impressing. Our parents beamed with pride and regularly reminded me that I should be more ambitious like your brother. 5 years after college, I had saved enough money and developed sufficient expertise to launch my own software business. I created customized inventory management systems for small to medium businesses, filling a niche that larger software companies overlooked. It wasn't glamorous, but I was solving real problems for real businesses, and my client list grew steadily through referrals. The same year, I founded my company, James, met Amanda at a charity gala. She came from a family with old money, but dwindling actual wealth, a perfect match for James, who had new money and endless social ambition. Their wedding was featured in a local society magazine, with our parents spending more than they could afford to create an impression of wealth and status. I served as best man, but felt like an outsider at the event, watching my family perform for people whose opinions they valued more than their own happiness. James and Amanda quickly produced 3 children, William, Sophia, and Alexander, currently aged 10, 8, and 6. Each birth announcement was more elaborate than the last, and each child was enrolled in the most exclusive preschools before they could even walk. Family gatherings became showcases for their children's achievements. William's tennis trophies, Sophia's ballet performances, Alexander's early reading skills. My parents transformed into the type of grandparents who carried brag books and turned every conversation toward their exceptional grandchildren. 2 years after his wedding, James purchased a 6,000 square foot mansion in Lake Forest, one of Chicago's most exclusive suburbs. The housewarming party featured a string quartet and catering from a Michelin-starred restaurant. My gift of a handcrafted dining table I had spent months making with a carpenter friend was relegated to their basement recreation room, deemed too rustic for their formal dining area. Throughout these years, my business grew steadily, if not spectacularly. I expanded to a small office with 4 employees, moved to a comfortable one-bedroom condo, and upgraded to a newer model Honda. My lifestyle remained modest compared to James's, but I was debt-free and building something I was proud of. When I shared news of a major contract or a business milestone at family gatherings, the response was typically polite disinterest, followed by a quick change of subject to James's latest deal or the children's activities. That computer stuff is fine. Diego, my mother would say with a dismissive wave, but it's not really a career with prestige, is it? Not like investment banking. My father was even more direct. When are you going to get serious and join a real company? I could talk to Bob Johnston about a position in his firm. At your age, James was already managing a team. The message was consistent: my path wasn't valid because it didn't align with their vision of success. Despite this, I maintained a relationship with my family, attending Sunday dinners when invited, sending thoughtful gifts for birthdays and anniversaries, and showing up for important events. I told myself that family was family, despite their inability to see or appreciate me for who I actually was. 3 years ago, the first cracks in James's perfect facade began to appear. The market had taken a downturn, affecting many of the investments he had championed to clients and personally invested in. He never explicitly admitted to professional difficulties, but I noticed subtle signs. The canceled vacation to the Maldives, the delayed renovation of their kitchen, the sudden interest in catching up with me over drinks. During one of these happy hour sessions, after his 3rd scotch, James revealed that he was experiencing what he called a temporary cash flow situation. His year-end bonus had been much smaller than anticipated, but he had already committed to several major expenses based on his projections. "It's just a short-term thing," he assured me, signaling the bartender for another round. "The market will correct, my positions will recover, and everything will be back on track. But right now, I could use a little help from my little brother." The little help he requested was a loan of $30,000 to cover private school tuition for the children until his funds freed up. It was a substantial amount, nearly all of my emergency savings, but James was family. He promised to repay me within 3 months, with interest. "You're not doing anything with that money anyway," he said with the casual arrogance that characterized most of our interactions. "It's just sitting in some boring savings account. At least this way, it's helping your niece and nephews get the education they deserve." Against my better judgment, I transferred the money the next day. James sent a text with a thumbs-up emoji in response. "No thank you, no formal acknowledgement of the loan, no paperwork." I created a simple document recording the amount and promised repayment date, but never asked James to sign it. He was my brother after all. 3 months came and went, with no mention of repayment. When I gently brought it up during a family dinner, James acted surprised. "Things are still tight," he said, lowering his voice so our parents couldn't hear. "The recovery is taking longer than expected. You don't need it right now anyway, right? It's not like you have a family to support." That first loan established a pattern that would continue and escalate over the next 3 years. 2 months after the tuition money, Amanda needed emergency gallbladder surgery. Their premium health insurance had been downgraded to a high-deductible plan as a cost-cutting measure, and they faced $8,000 in out-of-pocket costs. James called me at midnight from the hospital, and I was at the billing office with my credit card the next morning. 4 months later, James called because there was a situation with his Mercedes. I later discovered he had missed 3 payments, and the car was about to be repossessed. Another $12,000 from my business investment fund went to making his car payments current. The requests became more frequent and less apologetic. James stopped offering explanations or timelines for repayment. When I asked about the original $30,000, he acted offended. "I can't believe you're nickel and diming me when my family's well-being is at stake," he said. "When I get my next bonus, I'll take care of everything at once. Just be patient." But the big bonus never seemed to materialize, and the requests kept coming. Amanda needed a medically necessary cosmetic procedure that insurance wouldn't cover. The children's private school was offering an exclusive European educational trip that would look fantastic on college applications. The country club was raising their annual dues, and it would be social suicide to give up their membership. Each time I transferred the requested funds, though increasingly with reservations, I started keeping meticulous records of every dollar sent, telling myself it was just good business practice. The spreadsheet grew longer, and the total more staggering: 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. By the end of the third year, I had given James over $300,000, with not a single dollar repaid. To provide this level of support, I made significant sacrifices in my own life. I postponed my plan to purchase a house, continuing to live in my one-bedroom condo. I drove my aging Honda rather than upgrading. I cut back on small luxuries like dining out and travel. Most significantly, I pulled money from my business that could have been invested in growth, potentially limiting my company's expansion. The financial strain also affected my personal life. When I met Lucia, a brilliant graphic designer who worked with one of my clients, our connection was immediate and promising. But as things became serious, I hesitated to fully commit. How could I consider sharing my life when so much of my financial security was tied up in my brother's hands? How could I explain that despite my successful business, I couldn't afford the future we might want to build together? After 6 months of dating, Lucia sensed my reservation and ended things. I couldn't bring myself to explain the real reason for my hesitation. Despite these personal costs, I continued supporting James's family. I told myself I was doing it for my niece and nephews, ensuring they had opportunities and stability. I convinced myself that once the market improved, James would make good on his promises and repay everything. I ignored the growing resentment I felt when seeing social media posts of their luxury vacations or the children's extravagant birthday parties, all funded indirectly by my sacrifices. Most painfully, neither James nor my parents ever acknowledged the extent of my support. At family gatherings, the narrative remained unchanged. James was the successful one, the provider, the achiever. I was still the underperforming younger brother who had settled for a small business rather than aiming higher. When James boasted about William's prestigious tennis coach or Sophia's private ballet lessons, no one knew that my money had paid for these privileges. As the third year of this arrangement drew to a close, I found myself working 70-hour weeks to maintain my business while supporting 2 households. The emotional toll was becoming as significant as the financial one. I felt used, unappreciated, and increasingly angry. Yet I continued transferring money whenever James called. It had become a pattern too ingrained to break a role I had accepted without fully realizing the long-term implications. Something would have to change, but I couldn't yet see a way out that wouldn't hurt the children I had come to care for deeply, despite their parents' behavior. The breaking point, when it came, would arrive from an unexpected direction. As November turned to December, I found myself looking forward to the upcoming holiday season with cautious optimism. Despite the financial and emotional strain of supporting James's family, Christmas had always been a time when our family differences were set aside in favor of tradition and togetherness. Our parents hosted an elaborate Christmas Eve dinner followed by a gift exchange on Christmas morning, a tradition maintained since our childhood. I had already purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone: leather-bound classics for my father, a cashmere sweater for my mother, the latest gaming console for the children, and a weekend spa package for Amanda. For James, I had found a rare first edition of his favorite financial history book, ironically titled The Psychology of Money. The gifts had stretched my holiday budget, but I wanted to show my family that I cared, even if that sentiment wasn't always reciprocated. For the first time in 3 years, I had arranged to take a full week off between Christmas and New Year's. My small team had worked exceptionally hard to complete all client projects before the holiday, and I had promised them a generous bonus and uninterrupted time off. I plan to spend quality time with my family, perhaps even use the opportunity to have an honest conversation with James about our financial situation and chart a path toward resolution. 2 weeks before Christmas, on a Tuesday evening as I was finishing work, my phone rang with James's number. Assuming he was calling with another financial emergency, I answered with resignation. "Hey, what's up?" I asked already, mentally calculating which account I would need to draw from this time. "Just finalizing some holiday details," James replied, his tone casual. "Listen, about Christmas Eve dinner this year. We're doing things a bit differently." Different how I asked attention only half on the conversation, as I reviewed a client proposal. "Well, we're keeping it really small this year. Just the immediate family, you know, Mom, Dad, Amanda, the kids, and me." It took a moment for his words to register. "But I am immediate family," I said slowly. There was a slight pause before James continued. "Yeah, about that. Mom and Dad really want a certain atmosphere this year. They're trying to create a particular experience for the kids, you know, all about family unity and success and presenting the right image. And I don't fit into that image." I asked, my stomach tightening, as I began to understand what he was saying. James's laugh was short and dismissive. "Come on, Diego, you know how it is. Christmas at our parents' house is no place for. Well, let's be honest. It's no place for losers." The word hung in the air between us. Losers. That's how my brother saw me. That's how my family categorized me. "What exactly makes me a loser, James?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady, despite the anger and hurt surging through me. "Don't be sensitive," he replied. "It's just that you don't exactly project success, do you? Your apartment is barely bigger than William's bedroom. You drive a car that could belong to one of the housekeeping staff at my club. Your clothes look like you buy them at outlet malls. And let's not even talk about your perpetually single status while the rest of us have built actual families." Each word was a deliberate jab, designed to reinforce the narrative that had been constructed around me. Diego the underachiever. Diego the disappointment. Diego who couldn't measure up to the family standard. Mom specifically mentioned that your presence might bring down the mood, James continued, apparently oblivious to the impact of his words. "The kids are at an impressionable age, you know. We want them surrounded by examples of achievement and excellence." I remained silent, processing this explicit rejection from the family I had been quietly supporting for years. "It's nothing personal," James added, filling the silence with perhaps the most personal attack possible. "It's just about maintaining standards. You understand." "I understand perfectly," I replied, my voice calm despite the turmoil inside. "You don't want me at Christmas because I don't project the image of success that you and our parents value." "Exactly." James sounded relieved that I wasn't arguing. "I knew you'd get it. You're smart even if you don't apply yourself properly. Maybe next year, if your business takes off, or if you finally find a woman willing to settle for your lifestyle." "Thank you for being direct," I said, maintaining my composure through sheer force of will. "I appreciate knowing where I stand with the family." "No problem. Anyway, gotta run. Amanda's waiting to review the catering menu for our New Year's party. Talk soon." The call ended, and I sat motionless at my desk, the proposal forgotten in my mind, replaying James's casual cruelty. In that moment, something fundamental shifted within me. The careful justifications I had built around supporting James's family crumbled under the weight of his contempt. I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder where I kept records of every loan, every transfer, every financial sacrifice I had made for James and his family. $322,000 over 3 years. Money that had paid for private schools and luxury cars, for cosmetic surgeries and country club memberships. Money that had maintained the illusion of James's success while he categorized me as a loser unworthy of a place at the family Christmas table. The irony was almost too perfect. The loser had been bankrolling the winner all along, and no one knew it except me. My hands were shaking as I closed the folder. The hurt was profound, a physical ache radiating from my chest. I had always known on some level that my family valued appearance over substance, but to hear it stated so explicitly, to be cast out so casually, was a pain unlike anything I had experienced before. I left the office and walked for hours through the cold Chicago streets, my mind churning with memories and realizations. Every dismissive comment from my parents, every condescending remark from James, every moment I had been made to feel less than because my definition of success differed from theirs. And through it all, I had continued to support them financially and emotionally, showing up for every gathering, remembering every birthday, funding their lifestyle while being treated as an embarrassment. By the time I returned to my apartment, exhaustion had replaced the initial shock. But a strange clarity had also emerged. For the first time, I saw my family dynamic with perfect, unfiltered honesty. I had been enabling a toxic relationship, allowing financial dependence to masquerade as familial superiority, and it was time for that to end. The week following James's call was a period of deep reflection. I took long walks along Lake Michigan each morning before work, the December wind cutting through my coat as I processed my emotions and considered my options. The initial hurt had hardened into something more resolute, a determination to reclaim my self-respect and redefine the terms of my family relationships. On Wednesday evening, I met my friend Michael for dinner at our favorite pizza place. Michael had been my roommate in college and remained my closest friend, one of the few people who knew me authentically rather than through the distorted lens of family expectation. They actually used the word loser. Michael asked, disbelief evident in his voice, after I recounted the conversation with James. His exact words I confirmed. Christmas is no place for losers. Michael shook his head. And this is the same brother whose kid's private school tuition you've been paying, the one whose car you saved from repossession. The very same. Man, I've never liked your brother, you know that, but this is a new low. What are you going to do? It was the question I had been asking myself for days. I'm thinking it's time to stop enabling this dynamic. Cut off the financial support completely. Michael studied me carefully. You've been talking about doing that for 2 years. What's different now? Now I see clearly what I've been participating in, I replied. I've been funding my own exclusion, paying for the lifestyle that makes them feel superior to me. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about self-respect. It's about damn time, Michael said, raising his glass in a toast. To boundaries. To boundaries, I echoed, though I knew the reality of establishing them would be far more complicated than this symbolic gesture. The next day, I scheduled appointments with both my accountant and my lawyer. My accountant, Sophia, had been gently questioning my financial support of James for years, always careful to respect my decisions while expressing professional concern. $322,000, she repeated, reviewing my records. That's not loans, Diego. That's a lifestyle subsidy. And without any formal loan documentation, it would be very difficult to legally enforce repayment. I know, I admitted. I was naive. Not naive, she corrected. Just too generous with people who don't appreciate it. What's your plan now? I want to cut off all financial support immediately, but I need to understand the implications. Some of the arrangements are somewhat complex. Sophia nodded. The Children's Trust Fund you established, the automatic tuition payments, the co-signed loan for Amanda's medical procedure. We'll need to address each one carefully. But it's absolutely doable. My meeting with Rick, my attorney, focused on legally protecting myself from potential fallout. Your brother has become financially dependent on you, he explained. When you remove that support, there could be legal challenges or personal retaliation. We need to make sure you're protected. Over the next few days, I worked with both professionals to create a comprehensive plan. We decided on a graduated approach, immediate cessation of any automatic payments or new requests, followed by formal notification of the change in our financial relationship, and finally, a structured plan for how any future support would be handled. The Children's Trust Fund presented the most difficult decision. I genuinely cared for my niece and nephews despite their parents' behavior. After careful consideration, I decided not to dissolve the trust, but to freeze new contributions and modify the terms so that the funds could only be accessed for education expenses when each child turned 18. This way, James and Amanda couldn't access the money, but the children wouldn't be punished for their parents' actions. I also spent time preparing myself emotionally for the confrontation that would inevitably follow. I practiced responses to the arguments I anticipated from James and my parents. I role-played difficult conversations with Michael. I established a support system of friends who would be available if the emotional toll became too heavy. By Monday of the following week, everything was in place. The automatic tuition payment due that day was canceled. James's access to my emergency credit card was revoked. The monthly transfer to their household account was stopped. The only thing remaining was to inform James of the new reality. I drafted and redrafted an email striving for a tone that was clear and firm without being emotionally reactive. After several revisions and review by both Michael and Rick, I had a version I was satisfied with. James. This email serves as formal notification that effective immediately, I am discontinuing all financial support to you and your family. This includes tuition payments, household expense contributions, access to credit facilities, and any ad hoc financial assistance. The Children's Trust Fund will remain in place, but has been modified. Funds are now restricted to educational expenses, only accessible when each child turns 18. This decision follows your clear communication that I do not meet the standards required for inclusion in family gatherings. I respect your right to determine who belongs at your Christmas table, and I am similarly exercising my right to determine where my financial resources are directed. For clarity, this means no further tuition payments will be made. No additional funds will be transferred to your household account. Your access to my emergency credit card has been revoked. No new loans or financial assistance will be provided. A full accounting of funds provided over the past 3 years, totaling $322,487, is attached for your records. While I do not expect repayment, this document ensures we both have clear understanding of our financial history. I wish you and your family well in adjusting to financial circumstances that reflect your actual income rather than being supplemented by a loser like me. Diego. I read the email one final time, then clicked send before I could second-guess myself. The action was both terrifying and liberating, like stepping off a cliff and discovering I could fly. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my relationship with my family, setting terms rather than accepting theirs. Now all that remained was to wait for the inevitable fallout. 3 days passed in complete silence. No angry phone call from James. No disappointed message from my mother. No stern email from my father. The silence was almost more unnerving than the confrontation I had been bracing for. Had they simply written me off entirely? Had James not even noticed the cessation of financial support? Was my contribution so taken for granted that its absence wasn't immediately felt? I checked my phone, constantly jumping whenever it buzzed with a notification. I rehearsed responses to arguments that weren't coming. I woke at 3 in the morning, certain I had missed a call, only to find my notification screen empty. Maybe they're in shock, Michael suggested when I called him on the 3rd evening. Or maybe James is too embarrassed to admit to your parents that he's been depending on his loser brother all this time. Maybe I agreed, though. The waiting was wearing on my nerves. Either way, stay strong, Michael advised. The ball is in their court now. On the morning of the 4th day, as I was reviewing client proposals in my office, my phone lit up with James's number. Despite my preparation, my heart rate accelerated as I answered the call. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" James's voice was tight, with barely controlled fury. "Hello to you too, James," I replied, forcing myself to remain calm. "I just got a call from Westfield Academy saying William and Sophia's tuition payment was declined. They're threatening to not allow them back after winter break if the account isn't brought current immediately." "That's unfortunate," I said. "Perhaps you should speak with the financial aid office about payment plans." "Payment plans," James sputtered. "Are you serious right now? Just make the payment like you always do. Whatever game you're playing, leave my children out of it." "It's not a game, James. As I explained in my email, I'm no longer providing financial support to you or your family." "What email?" I didn't see any email. His tone suggested he had indeed seen it, but had chosen to ignore it, believing this strategy had worked for him in the past. "Check your inbox," I said. "I sent it on Monday. It outlines everything clearly." There was a moment of silence, presumably, as James pulled up the email on another device. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted from anger to disbelief. "This is a joke, right? You're throwing a tantrum because you weren't invited to Christmas. How petty can you be? It's not about the invitation, James. It's about respect, or rather the complete lack of it. You made it very clear where I stand in the family hierarchy. I'm simply adjusting my financial support to align with that standing. By punishing innocent children, real Matura Diego. I'm not punishing anyone, I countered. I'm simply stopping the subsidization of a lifestyle that you clearly can't afford on your own. The Children's Trust Fund still exists, by the way. They'll have money for college. But day-to-day expenses are now your responsibility, as they always should have been. James's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. You have no idea what you've started. When Mom and Dad hear about this, feel free to tell them everything I interrupted, including the part where you've been dependent on your loser brother's money for the past 3 years. I'm sure that will make for an interesting conversation. You ungrateful little. James began, but I cut him off again. Ungrateful. That's rich coming from you. $322,000, James. That's how much I've given you. And not once, not a single time did you say thank you. So don't talk to me about gratitude. The line went silent for several seconds, before James spoke again, his tone now calculating. Okay, I get it. You're upset about what I said. I shouldn't have used that word. It was out of line. But surely we can work something out without disrupting the children's education. Their education is your responsibility, not mine. I suggest you start by selling one of your luxury cars or canceling your country club membership. Those would be good first steps toward living within your actual means. This isn't over, James said, his voice cold. Not by a long shot. Actually, it is over. 3 years of financial exploitation is quite enough. Goodbye, James. I ended the call and sat back in my chair, heart racing but mind clear. The confrontation had gone almost exactly as I had anticipated, with James cycling through anger, disbelief threats, and finally manipulation. I had remained calm and firm, exactly as I had practiced. It was a small victory, but a significant one. True to James's threat, the next wave of pressure came from my parents. My mother called that evening, her voice wavering between concern and accusation. Diego, what's this? We hear about you stopping William and Sophia's school tuition. James says they might not be able to return after winter break. That's between James and the school, I replied. He'll need to make other arrangements. But you've always paid their tuition, she pressed. Why would you suddenly stop now? It's not sudden, Mom. It's the result of years of disrespect and exploitation, with the Christmas exclusion being the final straw. Christmas. Is that what this is about? Her voice rose in pitch. We were just trying to create a certain atmosphere this year. There's no need to hurt innocent children over something so trivial. If it's trivial, why exclude your own son? And why describe me as a loser who would bring down the mood? There was a pause before my mother responded. James shouldn't have used that word, but you know how important appearances are, and your lifestyle choices don't reflect the values we're trying to instill in the children. My lifestyle choices include running my own successful business and living within my means, Mom. If those aren't values worth instilling, I don't know what are. This isn't about your business, she insisted. It's about family responsibility. We support each other. Support has been entirely one-directional for years, I pointed out. I've been supporting James financially while being treated as a family embarrassment. That arrangement is now over. My mother's tone hardened. Your father will be very disappointed to hear this. I'm sure he will, I agreed. Just as I was disappointed to learn that my own family considers me unworthy of a place at their Christmas table. The call with my father the following day followed a similar pattern, though his approach was more authoritarian than emotional. This behavior is unacceptable, he declared, without preamble, when I answered. You will resume the tuition payments immediately and apologize to your brother for this disruption. No, Dad, I won't, I replied, his commanding tone having lost its power over me. James needs to take responsibility for his own family's expenses. This is about family duty, my father insisted. Something you clearly don't understand. I understand it perfectly, I countered. I fulfilled my family duty to the tune of over $300,000 while being treated with contempt. That ends now. My father's voice lowered dangerously. If you persist with this selfishness, there will be consequences for your place in this family. I actually laughed at that. My place in this family was made abundantly clear when I was deemed unworthy of a Christmas invitation. I'm simply adjusting my financial contributions to match the value you place on my presence. The conversation ended shortly thereafter with my father's final warning that I would regret this decision hanging between us. Over the next few days, other family members began reaching out. My Aunt Susan called to understand both sides of the story. My cousin Patrick sent a text suggesting I was being too harsh. My Uncle Robert emailed a lengthy message about the importance of family unity and forgiveness. To each, I provided the same calm, factual response. After years of financial support accompanied by emotional dismissal, I was establishing boundaries that aligned my financial involvement with the respect I received. Some were sympathetic once they understood the full context. Others maintained that family obligation should transcend personal feelings. None had a complete picture of the financial extent of my support, as James had carefully maintained the illusion of self-sufficiency. The most surprising development came a week after my email to James. I was discussing a client proposal with my team when my receptionist buzzed to inform me that Amanda was in the lobby, insisting on seeing me immediately. I excused myself from the meeting and walked to the reception area, where Amanda was pacing frantically, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. When she saw me, her expression transformed from anxiety to anger. "How could you do this to us?" she demanded loudly, drawing the attention of everyone in the reception area. "The school is threatening to dismiss the children. The country club is suspending our membership. The housekeeper quit because her last 2 checks bounced. All because you're having some sort of midlife crisis. Let's discuss this in my office," I suggested, motioning toward the hallway. "I don't need privacy to tell you what a selfish, vindictive person you are." Amanda continued, her voice rising further. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to our family? To your own flesh and blood?" "Amanda," I said firmly, "we can have this conversation privately in my office, or you can leave. Those are your options." Something in my tone must have conveyed that I wouldn't be manipulated by this public display. After a moment's hesitation, Amanda followed me down the hallway to my office. Once the door closed behind us, her demeanor changed dramatically. The righteous anger collapsed into desperate pleading. "Please, Diego," she said, sinking into a chair opposite my desk. "We're in real trouble here. James doesn't know I'm here, but I had to try something." "What kind of trouble?" I asked, taking my seat. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Everything's falling apart. The truth is, we've been in financial trouble for years. James's income isn't what he pretends it is. He lost several major clients after some bad investment advice, and his bonus has been minimal for the past 3 years. This confirmed what I had long suspected but never had confirmed. So my financial support wasn't supplemental. It was essential." She nodded miserably. "Without your tuition payments, the kids can't go back to Westfield. Without your contributions to our household account, we can't make the mortgage payment this month. James is too proud to admit how bad things are, but I'm telling you, we're weeks away from complete disaster." "Why maintain the facade?" I asked. "The luxury cars, the country club, the vacations. Why not adjust your lifestyle to match your actual income?" Amanda looked genuinely confused by the question. "We couldn't do that. What would people think? What would the children think? Our whole social circle is built around a certain lifestyle. We can't just opt out." In that moment, I saw clearly how Amanda was as trapped in the illusion as James was, perhaps even more so. Her entire identity was constructed around being the wife of a successful man, the mother of privileged children, the envy of her social circle. The reality of financial limitations was incomprehensible within her worldview. "I'm sorry for your situation," I said sincerely, "but I can't continue enabling a lifestyle built on deception and maintained at my expense, especially when I'm simultaneously being treated as a family embarrassment." "James shouldn't have said those things," Amanda conceded, her desperation evident. "He was wrong, and he knows it. He's just too proud to admit it. Please, if not for us, then for the children. They don't deserve to have their lives turned upside down." Her appeal to the children's welfare almost worked, as it had so many times before. I genuinely cared for my niece and nephews, but I also recognized that continuing to fund their privileged lifestyle while their parents fostered attitudes of entitlement and superiority was not truly in their best interest. "The children will be fine," I assured her. "Public schools in Lake Forest are excellent. Downsizing to a smaller home might actually bring your family closer together. Learning the value of money and the concept of financial limitations are important life lessons. Amanda stared at me in disbelief. You're really going to let us crash and burn, aren't you? I'm going to let natural consequences take their course, I corrected. James has made choices. Those choices have consequences. It's not my responsibility to shield him from reality any longer. Amanda stood gathering her designer purse with shaking hands. James was right. You really don't understand family loyalty at all. As she reached the door, I replied softly. Loyalty goes both ways, Amanda. When was the last time anyone in the family showed loyalty to me? She had no answer to that, and left without another word. Amanda's unexpected visit left me with more questions than answers. While she had confirmed my suspicions about James's financial situation, the extent of their difficulties seemed more severe than I had imagined. Was it possible that they were truly on the brink of financial collapse? Or was this another manipulation tactic designed to restore my financial support? After careful consideration, I decided to hire Taylor Reed, a private investigator recommended by my attorney. It was not a decision I made lightly, as it felt like an invasion of my brother's privacy. However, given the substantial amount of money I had invested in his family and the inconsistencies in his financial narrative, I needed to understand the true situation before considering any further action. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, I explained to Taylor during our initial meeting. I just need verification of some financial claims and a clearer picture of their actual circumstances. Taylor nodded professionally. We can conduct a thorough financial background investigation using public records and legal information channels. Property records, tax liens, civil court filings, business registrations, that sort of thing. It will give us a pretty comprehensive picture without crossing any ethical lines. 2 weeks later, Taylor presented her findings in a detailed report that confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed problems I hadn't anticipated. Your brother has been living well beyond his means for years, she explained, opening a folder filled with documents. His income has indeed decreased substantially since 2022, just as his expenses have increased. The report detailed multiple high-interest loans taken out against their home equity credit card debt, exceeding $150,000 across 8 different cards, and a gambling problem that had escalated over the past 4 years. He's a regular at 3 different casinos in the region, Taylor noted. Based on player card activity, he's lost approximately $230,000 in the past 2 years alone. Most alarmingly, their home was 3 months away from foreclosure. The mortgage hadn't been paid since September, and the bank had already initiated proceedings. Without intervention, they'll be forced to leave the property by April, Taylor concluded. Their credit is destroyed, their assets are leveraged to the hilt, and there are no financial reserves we could identify. I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the magnitude of James's deception. Not only had he been dependent on my financial support, but he had also been actively destroying his family's security through gambling and financial mismanagement, all while maintaining the facade of success and superiority. Thank you for your thoroughness, I told Taylor, writing her a check for her services. This clarifies a lot. If you don't mind me asking, she said as she gathered her materials, what will you do with this information? I considered the question carefully. Use it to make informed decisions about how to proceed. Not to harm or expose him, but to ensure that any help I might offer actually addresses the real problems rather than enabling further self-destruction. Christmas arrived, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't with my family for the holiday. Michael had invited me to join his family's celebration, a warm gathering that contrasted sharply with the status-conscious events I was accustomed to. No dress code, no performance pressure, just good food and good company. Michael promised, and he delivered exactly that. His parents welcomed me warmly. His siblings included me in inside jokes, and his nieces and nephews dragged me into impromptu living room games. It was relaxed, genuine, and surprisingly healing. This was what family could be. I realized a source of comfort rather than anxiety, acceptance rather than judgment. Meanwhile, social media showed James and Amanda's perfect Christmas unfolding at our parents' home. Professional photographs captured coordinated outfits, elaborate table settings, and carefully posed moments of family joy. The contrast between these curated images and the financial reality revealed by Taylor's investigation was jarring. I found myself especially affected by photos of William, Sophia, and Alexander opening lavish gifts, their faces bright with excitement. These children I cared about were living in a bubble of privilege that was weeks away from bursting, and they had no idea. Their parents continued the performance of prosperity even as the foundation crumbled beneath them. January brought the tangible consequences of my financial withdrawal. William and Sophia were not permitted to return to Westfield Academy after winter break due to the unpaid tuition. According to Michael's wife, who taught at a nearby public school, they had been enrolled in the local public elementary and middle schools. Amanda, whose social media had previously showcased her charity luncheons and tennis lessons, quietly took a position as a receptionist at a local real estate office. Their luxury SUV disappeared from Instagram photos, replaced by careful framing that excluded transportation altogether. The country club membership, which James had once described as essential to maintaining business relationships, was revoked due to unpaid dues. His business profile on LinkedIn remained unchanged, but Mutual Connections reported that he had been taking increasingly desperate measures to retain clients, including drastically reduced fees. Through it all, I maintained my distance. I didn't comment on social media posts or reach out to check on them directly. I was allowing the natural consequences to unfold without intervention, though it was often difficult to resist the impulse to help, especially when thinking about the children. In early February, nearly 2 months after my financial cutoff, James appeared unannounced at my apartment on a Saturday morning. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. My always impeccably groomed brother looked exhausted, his designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater, his confident posture now slumped with defeat. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I stepped aside, allowing him into my modest one-bedroom apartment. He surveyed the space with new eyes, noticing perhaps for the first time the quality of my furniture, in the original artwork on my walls, the overall sense of comfort and stability that came from living within my means. "Coffee," I offered. He nodded gratefully, and I busied myself in the kitchen, giving him time to collect his thoughts. When I returned with 2 mugs, he was sitting on my couch, staring at a framed photo of the children that I kept on my bookshelf. "They miss you," he said simply. "I miss them too," I replied, handing him a mug and taking a seat in the armchair opposite him. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of our fractured relationship filling the space between us. Finally, James spoke, his eyes fixed on his coffee. "We're losing the house," he admitted. "Foreclosure notice came yesterday. We have 60 days to vacate." "I know," I said quietly. His head snapped up. "You know." "I hired an investigator after Amanda came to see me. I needed to understand what was really happening." James's face flushed with anger, then embarrassment, then resignation, in rapid succession. "So you know everything. The gambling, the debt, all of it." "Most of it, I imagine." He set his mug down and buried his face in his hands. "I've destroyed everything. My career is hanging by a thread. Amanda is talking about taking the kids to live with her parents in Michigan. Mom and Dad can barely look at me now that they know the truth." "What truth do they know?" I asked carefully. "That I've been lying about my success for years. That I gambled away my clients' money and my family's security. That I've been dependent on my little brother's handouts while treating him like he was beneath me." James looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "That I'm the actual loser in this family, not you." The admission, which I had once thought would bring satisfaction, only made me sad. My brother, for all his arrogance and cruelty, was a broken man sitting in my living room, his carefully constructed identity shattered beyond repair. "I didn't cut you off to punish you, James," I said after a moment. "I did it because the relationship had become toxic and enabling. I was funding my own mistreatment." "I know," he whispered. "I've had a lot of time to think these past weeks, about how I've treated you, about the kind of example I've been setting for my kids." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I'm sorry, Diego. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am truly sorry for how I've treated you. For taking your money while looking down on you, for excluding you from Christmas, for all of it." It was the first genuine apology I could remember receiving from my brother. Not qualified, not deflected, not immediately followed by a request for money. Just a simple acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. James shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. Find an apartment we can actually afford. Try to keep my remaining clients. Amanda's job helps, but it's not enough for our basic expenses, let alone the debt." He paused, then added, "I'm considering bankruptcy. And the gambling. 28 days clean," he said with a hint of pride. I started going to GA meetings after Amanda threatened to leave with the kids. It's hard, but I'm trying. We talked for nearly 3 hours that morning, more openly than we had in our entire adult lives. James revealed the full extent of his financial deception, how each lie had required another to maintain the facade, how the gambling had begun as an attempt to quickly recover investment losses and spiraled into a full-blown addiction. I shared my own perspective. The hurt of being perpetually devalued, the stress of supporting his family while being treated as inferior, the painful exclusion from Christmas that had finally broken the cycle. As he was preparing to leave, James hesitated at the door. "I'm not asking for money," he said carefully. "I don't deserve your help, and I need to fix this mess myself. But I am asking if there's any chance we could rebuild some kind of relationship eventually, for the kids if nothing else. They really do miss their uncle." I considered his request thoughtfully. "I'd like to have a relationship with the children," I acknowledged, "and I'm open to rebuilding with you too, but it would need to be different, based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency." "I'd like that," James said softly. "And Diego, thank you for stopping the money when you did. As horrible as these past weeks have been, I needed this wake-up call before I lost everything that actually matters." After he left, I sat in my quiet apartment processing the conversation. It had been painful but necessary, a first step toward honesty in our family relationships. Whether it would lead to genuine change remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, I felt cautiously optimistic about the possibility. 6 months after my decision to cut financial ties with James, the transformation in his family was remarkable. They had moved from their foreclosed mansion to a 3-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. A significant downsize that James later admitted was the best thing that could have happened to us. The children, after initial resistance, had adapted to their new circumstances with surprising resilience. William discovered a passion for soccer at his public school, where he made friends based on shared interests rather than social status. Sophia joined the school choir and found her voice literally and figuratively in this new environment. Even young Alexander seemed happy or thriving with the increased family time that came from their simplified lifestyle. Amanda, perhaps most surprisingly, had flourished in her new role. What began as an emergency stopgap job at the real estate office evolved into a genuine career path. She discovered an aptitude for marketing and client relations, recently earning a promotion to marketing coordinator with a salary that contributed significantly to their household income. James had maintained his sobriety through regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings and therapy. His investment firm had downsized dramatically, but he had managed to retain a core group of loyal clients by being transparent about his past mistakes and demonstrating a new, more conservative approach to their portfolios. His income was a fraction of what he had once claimed, but it was honest money earned through ethical work. Our parents, after the initial shock of James's financial collapse and my role in supporting him, had begun a slow reevaluation of their values. They would never completely abandon their concern with appearances, but seeing their golden child's fall from grace had forced them to question what truly mattered in life. My relationship with James was cautiously rebuilding on new foundations. We began with short visits, focused on the children, then progressed to occasional lunches where we continued the honest conversations that had begun in my apartment that February morning. In July, I invited them all to dinner at my apartment, the first full family gathering since the previous Christmas from which I had been excluded. I had recently purchased my first home, a comfortable 3-bedroom condo in a pleasant Chicago neighborhood, the kind of stable investment I had postponed for years while supporting James's family. "This place is really nice," Uncle Diego William commented as he explored the space. At 13, he was becoming more observant and thoughtful, less influenced by the materialistic values that had shaped his early childhood. "Thanks, buddy. I've been saving for a long time to buy it." "Dad says you're really smart with money," William continued. "He says we should all learn from you." This simple statement reflecting James's new attitude toward me and my choices meant more than any apology. The dinner was notably different from our previous family gatherings. The conversation wasn't dominated by status symbols or achievements. Instead, we talked about books we were reading, projects at work that excited us, places we hoped to visit someday. The children shared school stories without being prompted to showcase accomplishments. My parents asked genuine questions about my software business, showing interest rather than barely concealed disappointment. After dinner, as Amanda and my mother cleared plates despite my protests, James and I stepped onto my small balcony. "I never properly thanked you," he said, looking out at the city lights. "For what?" I asked. "For stopping the money when you did. If you had continued enabling me, I would have lost everything that actually matters. My marriage, my relationship with my kids, my self-respect." He turned to face me. It was the hardest 6 months of my life, but also the most important. "I didn't do it to teach you a lesson," I admitted. "I did it because I needed to respect myself." "I know, but it taught me one anyway." James smiled ruefully. "Several lessons, actually, about what success really means. About how money can't fix problems that aren't financial at their core. About how family should treat each other." Inside, I could hear the children laughing with my father, a sound of genuine joy, rather than the performative perfection that had characterized our previous gatherings. "They're happier now," I observed. "Even with less." "Especially with less," James corrected. "We actually see each other now. Talk to each other. The kids don't have every material thing they want, but they have parents who are present and honest. Turns out, that's worth more than private school and fancy vacations." That evening marked a turning point in our family dynamic. It wasn't perfect, and years of established patterns couldn't change overnight, but it was a beginning. In the months that followed, I found myself experiencing a freedom I hadn't known in years. Without the financial burden of supporting James's family, I was able to invest more deeply in my own business, which grew steadily under my focused attention. I expanded to a team of 12, moved to a larger office space, and developed new software solutions that addressed emerging market needs. I also began dating Catherine, a children's book illustrator I met through a client. Unlike my previous relationship with Lucia, I entered this one without financial reservations or divided loyalties. Catherine's creativity and genuine nature were refreshing after years of status-conscious family interactions, and our relationship developed naturally and joyfully. James continued his recovery, recently celebrating 1 year of sobriety. He and Amanda had begun marriage counseling, addressing the patterns of deception and materialism that had nearly destroyed their family. The children were thriving in their new schools, developing friendships and interests that reflected their individual personalities rather than social expectations. My parents, while still struggling with some of their ingrained values, had made visible efforts to change. My father had started asking for my business advice, a tacit acknowledgement of my success on my own terms. My mother had toned down her social climbing, focusing more on actual relationships than impressive connections. As December approached again, bringing the anniversary of the Christmas exclusion that had catalyzed so much change, I decided to host the family holiday gathering at my new home. It would be a symbolic reclaiming of my place in the family, but also an opportunity to establish new traditions based on connection rather than performance. The celebration was deliberately modest compared to previous years. I prepared most of the food myself with help from Catherine, who had become an important part of my life. The decorations were tasteful, but not extravagant. The gifts were thoughtful rather than expensive, many of them handmade or experience-based rather than status symbols. During the gift exchange, I was touched to receive a handcrafted wooden box from James, something he had made himself in a woodworking class he had started taking as part of his recovery program. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a set of papers, a formal acknowledgement of debt for the full $322,000 I had provided over the years, with a modest repayment plan outlined. "I know it will take years," James said quietly, "maybe decades. But I want to make this right, even if it's just a small amount each month." "James, that's not necessary," I began, but he interrupted. "It is necessary. For me, for my recovery, and for our relationship. I don't want to be the brother who took advantage of you anymore. I want to be the brother who makes amends and honors his obligations." I was moved by this gesture of accountability, more meaningful than any grand repayment could have been. Okay, I agreed. But the money goes directly into the children's education fund. The evening concluded, with all of us gathered in my living room, the children playing a board game on the floor, the adults talking comfortably about plans for the coming year. It was simple, genuine, and more satisfying than any of the elaborate performances that had characterized our previous gatherings. As the family prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "This was wonderful, Diego," she said, a sincerity in her voice I rarely heard. "Thank you for bringing us together, especially after last year." "Thanks for coming," I replied. "It meant a lot to have everyone here." "I owe you an apology," she continued, "for not seeing you clearly all these years, for valuing the wrong things, for raising you and James to believe that appearances matter more than substance." She glanced over at James, who was helping Alexander into his coat. "I'm trying to do better now." "We all are," I assured her. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Catherine had headed home, with plans to return the next day, I sat alone in my living room, reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From exclusion, to hosting from enablement, to boundaries from being labeled a loser, to finding genuine success and happiness on my own terms. The lesson hadn't been easy for any of us, but it had been necessary. By standing firm and requiring respect, I had not only reclaimed my own dignity, but had ultimately helped my brother find a path to a more authentic life. By refusing to fund a facade of success, I had created space for real connection to flourish. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we love is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their choices. Sometimes the bravest act of love is establishing boundaries that honor our own worth, while creating opportunity for genuine change. As I prepare to enter a new year with clear boundaries, honest relationships, and a future full of possibilities, I'm grateful for the painful Christmas exclusion that ultimately freed us all from the prison of appearances. In losing my place at that table, I found the strength to build a better one where everyone is valued for who they truly are, not what they appear to be. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling harmful patterns even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.